it did and just clear up any confusion going forward, especially with a lot of updates coming out. I don't want people to get like overwhelmed with like still trying to learn heat maps and then having like all these new updates coming out and they're struggling and stuff like that. Um, so I kind of wanted just like an open discussion of like whoever wanted to like ask a question or go over things or anything like that. Um, we can all answer. We got a big group over here, so a lot of good traders and stuff. And then John and Nico, you guys can answer whatever question you guys want to, too. We'll see what they do in the chat. The map requests, yeah. I stop loss these nuts is a good one. All right, he said whenever someone says this level needs to hold, what time frame? I always get confused on that. I mean, it kind of just depends on like price action. I mean, there's not really like, it depends on how much room and how much meat it has left on the bone to the upside. If you have, say you're at a support level and the king node to the upside is, 5 or $10 in SPX towards the upside. The thing is, like, it can depend. I think there's not really like a specific answer on that. I usually use a 3 or 5 minute, but I'm usually buying when it goes
Same.
into that node before it even starts bouncing upwards, because that'll give you your best entry possible and your best risk to reward, to where you can set your stop loss below that node or below that level and have a tight stop where you can only lose like 5-10%, and you can gain 30, 40, 50, 60% that way. If you're waiting for a confirmation, right? You're waiting for a 5 minute candle close, 10 minute candle close. By the time that 10 minute candle closes, you're already you already missed out on like 40% gains, 30% gains, and say,
Yeah.
you know, after that 15 minute when you're entering, it only goes 8% once you enter and then reverses back down to your negative 30. You only got 8%, but since I bought off that support, I'm up like 45%. I'm exiting at like 35. You're exiting at negative 20. So it's a
Yeah, that's
very kind of like a wishy-washy kind of, you know,
tough.
way to
Like
answer that, right? It's kind of tough. I mean, anyone who charts or tells you that it's gonna say there's no set uh specific time
there
unless you're
is.
like, yeah,
I
unless you're like trying to swing. If you're trying to swing off that level and you're looking for like a 30-point move or a 40-point move to the upside in like an individual stock, you could wait like a 15-minute candle close, 30-minute candle close, an hour. If you're talking about indexes, like you're talking within 3 minute, 5 minute kind of thing. I don't know if you
yes.
want to talk about that, John.
Yeah. Well, I would just want. So I'll repeat the question that stop loss these nuts just mentioned for the recording. Whenever someone says this level needs to hold on what time frame, I always get confused on that. Jewel, to add to that, I will say too, like I I have a little bit more of like a concrete answer for that, but it's only like really applicable for scalping indexes. So like NQ, QQQ, SPX, whatever. Since I trade on 3 minute time frame, I basically refer to the 3 minute time frame to answer that question, right? I will my how I see it, it's a little bit more cut and dry, but it's also circumstantial. It doesn't always work out this way. But I need some sort of um, structure to base my exit off of. I like to see a break of that node and the retest does not hold either. And that will be my criteria for exit. That's me. But to what Jules said, it's also very wishy washy. But because I need some sort of exit strategy, that's how I have been able to interpret that uh, that phrase. This level needs to hold. That's how I interpret it, and it works out more often than not that it's likely it doesn't hold. Of course, it doesn't always work out that way, but For me, in my specific parameters and my risk tolerance, that's how I see it. All right, so next question. Can you explain more about overshooting a Barney node and when to know to fade that move, expecting a reversal versus when the move would likely continue and not reverse? See, that's I'm glad you mentioned that because I hear and I see a lot of the times, so probabilities matter, right? This is basically a game of probabilities. When we're looking to play deflections of nodes, maybe the map doesn't necessarily look like it wants a reversal yet, right? But here's the thing. If we have a really, really strong Barney node, like a really, really massive Barney node, let's just say it's the king node, right? And maybe there's not a lot of upside left. Maybe there's not a lot of steam in that tank to fuel higher. But we don't necessarily know if it's going to reverse yet, because as we know, if a purple node overshoots and it holds above, it could end up as a floor. We don't necessarily know. But what we're banking on by playing the overshoot is number one, like assuming this is a bearish scenario, is playing the overshoot gives us the cheap entry on puts, right? But we also need to see chart context as well, right? It's not as just simple as saying, I see this node on SPY that is massive to the upside, a purple node, we can expect an overshoot. But if the context isn't really supporting, like basically that's to say like if if we're basically deflecting our purple node to the upside, right? But we're near a double bottom, it doesn't really make sense to short that, right? But nevertheless, that's to say like if you're going to play those, like you need to see like lack of upside accumulation. That node needs to be big and that needs to be strong in value, right? To play that reversal. But basically to answer the deflection and let the node reshuffling happen in your favor. Because it could not work out in your favor, but at least you had a really, really great entry. You could make money just off of arbitrage alone, which arbitrage just basically means just saying the fact that you lowballed the crap out of it, and by the time you entered, you're already up 20%, right? So that's the essence of playing no deflections, is getting the best risk to reward possible and getting the most cheapest entry possible in puts and calls for that matter, right? So yeah, I mean, fading Barneys is very, very tough, right? Because we don't know necessarily whether we're going to reverse or not. But the idea is
I
be
could
patient.
also.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Basically, just to finish my thought, like basically it is a game of probability. So if it's like a massive node and you're expecting some sort of reshuffle, to basically bank on the reshuffle to happen in your favor. But also there's cues, right? There's this charts for context and this potential nodes accumulating to the downside ahead of time to kind of support the idea, right? It all depends on context on the charts and accumulation in your favor.
So, I kind of wrote up like a quick Friday price action recap, which I'll share my screen now. Let me know if you guys can see it
When you
because it kind of
recap
answers
this,
that.
can you add in the velocity shifts of the positive gamma stacked above downside nodes?
Let me just show this quick. I have no idea. Kind of what you said when in one ear and out the other. I'm not gonna lie. But can you
Heard.
guys see my screen quick? I'm just being honest. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I was looking at specifically. So this is how I kind of do like my recaps, where I'll number out. You guys have all probably seen this on my Twitter or whatever. I'll number out like the bottom, like the bigger, like the bounces from here, the shorts from here, or whatever. So for this move two here, right? This one specifically, we had an overshoot. So this is around like 10:15, 10:18 we started bouncing, right? On SPX. So if you look at that, if you look at that map, right? It's pretty much the 6700 node that is kind of being used as support, right? But if you play it out, and I draw it out on the screen here, 6700 is here, right? So if you're waiting for 6700, your entry is technically, in this green candle here. You get like a 15% move, or maybe like 10%, and then you're instantly red, right? So you would want to buy like this bounce right here. The thing is, I don't really look at this 6700 if I'm trying to buy the dip. What I'm looking at actually is this QQQ 600 node. I'm looking to see if this holds. I'm not really looking at this map here because if you waited for confirmation for 6700 like I just showed you guys here, that's all the way up here. Like you're already late on this huge move. You literally missed out on a 10-point bounce while you were waiting for 6700 confirmation, right? So if you play through this map here, which is this bounce, which is about at 10:15, and you eye this Q's map here, you can kind of see that we kind of never really go below 67, like we never go below 600. We bounce on it, and that's where we get this move here on SPX's map, right? Because this goes from about to 10:30. So if you look at that Q's map, then you'll start seeing like it's hard to see because the spot price doesn't really move because of the move over here. But if you flip to the Q's map, right, you draw out 60, if you draw out 600 here, it's kind of like you would buy literally on this red candle and kind of see if it overshot this yellow node. And you can have your stop literally like if you enter on this candle here, you can literally have your stop right here, which is only, a 40-cent stop loss. I usually mark my stops red. And you could have played this up and started trimming once we started pumping up a little bit, because you would be wary that all the king nodes on all three indexes are to the downside. So every call that you try to enter, any bounce is going to be kind of short-lived, just because the maps are showing you that you have all this downside pressure here accumulating. I wouldn't really be entering calls. I'd be looking for places too short. That's how I would read these maps on Friday. Um, if all these king nodes were to the upside, you would be looking for places to buy the dip. These are all telling you that there's a bunch of downside pressure. You want to be looking for A plus, moves to short. So technically, you could have waited for this third move here, which would have paid you a lot more, and you would have had a lot more better risk to reward ratio because of all these downside pressures here. But if you're trying to play this bounce here, I would have been looking at this 600 node here, not over here, not this purple node, and seeing if this holds. Because if 600 holds on Qs, SPY's going to start bouncing, and SPX is going to start bouncing too. It'll work kind of like in parallel, really. Um, I would have noticed that there's not really much upside nodes here. I think we end up probably rejecting that 670 node, and that's kind of what gatekeeps us. So
Do
looking at this map, looking at this map before you talk my bad, you could buy the dip. Like you have a 600 support here, you have a 6700 support here, but you have a 670 ceiling on SPY. So your buy the dip move is like a quick scalp based off on what all these three maps are showing, especially with these downside pressures here that end up growing really, really big.
Yeah, that
So
and
that was
all
that.
that positive gamma too on QQQ and Spy.
Yeah, I think the third move honestly was way better because this is that 1030. And that's this move here, which literally was just so that's 1032. So that's about like right here. We reject this 670 node almost like it perfectly. So you want to use all three at once, pretty much, to short. Because if you're using just SPX's map here, there's not really, a huge king node here to short off of that would have been clear. Over here too, I mean, you have these positive stacks, but you don't know if it's going to reject at 602, 603, 604, 605. Like, you're not really sure, right? Spy here is the dead giveaway because you have that 670 node that we're bouncing off of and rejecting. And I think it almost hits it to a T, if I remember correctly. 670's here on Spy. So I mean it overshot by like 20 like 20 15 cents. This is a way easier, kind of move to visualize with the maps without looking at um, SPX and QQQ. So I would have shorted SPX based off Spy's map. That's how I would have played that move number three.
Joe, can I add on
So
to
that's
that?
one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for the bounce off 600, I want to add that you'd expect for that 600 node to have a reaction because it's a fresh level. So, like you said, even though like with all the downside pressure, you're looking for those downside moves, but that 600 can be a scalp, and then that's one of the confluences on why it could, get that bounce into those ceilings. And then as we were going down into the 600, the 670 SPY continued to grow as we were moving down in price. So that's also another sign that there's a high chance that we deflect off QQQ 600 back into 670 for the short, which was also a 50 fib retracement from the high of day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you guys care if I interject with my limited knowledge?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one thing that I've found with this, and like it probably will be a good point for me to learn a little bit. Um, Basically, the way that I've always traded is trying to find reversals because I use divergences and I use, liquidity patterns. And I know you guys stress like double bottoms, double tops, or look at head and shoulders, those things. One thing I've found and one thing that I've always done, especially being new to this, but one thing I've always done is I never traded really the first 30 minutes. And in the morning, I try to take it lighter and wait a little bit. And one thing I learned with using Heat Seeker as a confluence is that it's easier, especially as you're learning to use it, like as I've been learning to use it, to like go into the middle of the day, into the afternoon, after you've seen which map out of the Trinity is the established leader. And John Wicks actually kind of when we went over a training session, not long ago, kind of alluded to that, and then I kind of found that that worked best for me. So I think like as you're learning it and looking at it, when you're like starting it, like to actually use it as a part of your strategy, it seems like it gets clearer as the day goes on because you know which one is leading. So 10:30, 11, I wouldn't have known which one was leading. Now, experienced people might have been like, okay, QQQ because of this, like you guys are saying. But with my confluences and then being in the range and seeing the SPY 600 node being so, growing so much at the bottom and then having QQQ be the rug and being the cleanest map, I would have used QQQ as that confluence. Now, I did that more on Thursday, right? That was kind of a similar kind of day, but Friday I was catching the range and getting, calls, getting, like 50% moves, when I could have been paying attention more to the heat seeker. But um, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that is something that new people, like without understanding everything that you guys do, can really pay attention to and like look towards like the afternoon to see which one has been established and really get a foothold in the nodes in the map.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure, Gamma gets more precise and gets more accurate as the day goes on. That's why like when you're playing mock and you're playing like end of day moves like 3 p.m. plus, you always see people saying like, "Holy shit! Like these levels are on point. Like what the heck's going?" Like they're all freaking out. Like that's because Gamma gets more precise towards the end of the day. Um, the first 30 minutes are very chaotic. Like I tried doing this recap quickly today, and I could not tell you any reason why. Look, just looking at Gamma that we rejected here on SPX. Like I don't think anything. I don't know if it was down at that time. I don't think it was, but nothing was clear for me to take this move. I have 2, 3, 4 here. Those were really clear moves, especially this number 3 one. That was just a spy 670 short. Like we're coming up into a 670 king node. Short that, and you would have literally gotten a 55. If I mean, you probably wouldn't have hold that, but a $55 short to the downside, and all it was just we were just rejecting that 670 node and spy. Like
There was
why
bearish
care
divergence
about?
there as well, actually.
Yeah, like why care about this shit here? Why care about this bounce over here at open, like even playing that? Because Heat Seeker's not clear. Wait for that 670 short here. Just take that. You're done for today. You don't have to trade any of this shit either. And I think people try to really jump in the gun because they see a lot of other people who do that. You know, you don't have to force yourself to do any of that. Um, so yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, try not to trade before 10 a.m. and everything after that. As the day goes on, everything gets more clear and precise. So
For what my 2 cents is worth, I don't trade before 10.
Yeah,
True.
no, I agree completely.
let me take a look at this move 4 because I think move 4 was actually really clean too. Um, I mean that was here. I don't know if you guys can see this quick. I have a screenshot of it. We were coming down into this purple node. I'm pretty sure it was your first touch too. So for everyone who reads the documents, first touch of like pretty big volume nodes, you always want to play those because the odds of them working out, I think, is over like 75%. I don't know the percentage. And then every time, you start hitting that node, as you always hear us say, your percentage of it, holding as support or holding as a ceiling, goes lower and lower. For move 4, looking at SPY, this looks, I mean, I can't really tell you why we bounced it, right?
It's
If you were
reverse
just
rug,
looking at the SPY map.
664.
Okay,
Yeah,
so there's a
PTR.
reverse rug there. But if you're looking at SPX here, you're coming into a 660 purple support. You look at Qs, you're coming into a 595 support here. You know, if you couldn't, if you're not like that experienced with Heatseeker and you couldn't tell like, oh, this is also a reverse rug here, it looks kind of messy, whatever, you could understand it. All you had to do is look at QQQ and SPX, see that they're both coming into these supports, know that they're both coming into their first touches. So you always want to play your first touches. So even if it did, 660's here. Even if we did fall to 6655, you should be buying calls there because you know it's the first touch of that node. And you know that the odds of that bouncing are like 75%, 80%, 70%, whatever it is. That's damn good percentage odds in the stock market. That's almost unheard of. So even if you overshot this purple 6660, line that you probably would have had drawn as a node, you want to keep buying calls here, and ended up actually running a good amount here, and you would have had another great trade that was kind of A plus too because it was a first node touch of two indexes. So that was two great moves there that were kind of A plus, that were kind of easier to see. You have that 670 short up here, and then you had these two nodes as supports here, and this one had a reverse rug. But if you're not that experienced, and you couldn't really tell that because you see, positive purple, positive whatever, you had these two clean maps here that you could have played off of. And then for the rest of the day, I mean, you were chopping between, the 660 SPX node. You could have kept shorting that because you have downside pressure on the maps. So if you go to like 1230 quick. which is here. You have that 660 node, right? There's nothing major above this node. You know, there's nothing crazy like 50 million volume. There's no king node up here. Um, so you can tell also by price action that it's kind of been respecting this 660 node this whole time. And SPY also has downside. This has downside too. And you could have just kept shorting that and then buying calls at the bottom and just playing through this. But if you're not really, experienced, you don't like scalping, you don't like, playing through chop, whatever, you already had, three good moves here in the morning. If you missed these two, that you could have played that would have, caused you less stress than doing all this bullshit here. And then towards here was end of the day. If you don't like playing class three, which I don't really recommend because it's just all gambling and risk. You had three good moves and you're done. I tell people all the time, you just need one. Like you see Glitch, right? When Glitch is putting like 300k in a play, he's not putting 300k in a play here. He's not putting 300k in a end of day play. He's putting 300k in like this SPY 670 short here that was clean, and that's where you get those videos from, and that's where you get those big gains. And this is a move that you would want to size like you know at least like decently heavy if you're experienced or whatever, because it's an A+ trade. So
You mind if I steal the screen real quick, Giul? I have something for Friday I can talk about as well for the catching that opening move. Let me take that real quick. Okay. Can y'all see my screen? Yeah, it looks like it's presenting. So
it's kind of like echoing though.
Yeah, you
That's
have a
your
bit of
voice.
an echo.
oh, it's kind of echoing. Oh shoot. Okay. My microphone's set up. Here. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. I turned down my headphones a tiny little bit, so hopefully it's not like echoing too bad right now. So
Is it
Stream failed to start. Is it just me? It's saying on my side, stream failed to start. Is anyone else getting that?
Yep,
Is it
that's what
just
I'm
me?
getting.
Okay, that's what I thought.
all right, I'll try one more time. If not, I can just share a little write-up or just a summary of okay. Is it working now?
Yes,
Okay.
still a bit of an echo, but yes.
Okay. My apologies, folks. So I think it's been said a few times, but I think Glitch has said price action first and then heat seeker. So something that is absolutely no secret that gets talked about all the time in Skylit and Asgard is uh, drawing very simple support and resistance lines. If you look at Glitch's write up for Friday, he just drew like a single line on QQQ and he was just shorting that the whole afternoon. But people were asking how you could maybe like catch the top or something like that on Friday because it came up kind of short on Heatseeker in terms of just the pure gex for calling that top. And if you just zoom out on your chart, switch to like the 10-minute chart.
Wait, Hazy,
And
Hazy, Hazy. A lot of people saying screen's not loading, and I can't see it either.
shit. All right. I'll share a little write up of this then. My bad.
Yeah, I can't see it either.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, sure. But okay, cool. So if you just zoom out on the SPX, SPY, QQQ charts, and you just zoom out on like a 10-minute chart or something like that, you'll see that roughly around like 67.15 to 67.20 on SPX, like SPY 670 or so, 671, and Q's like 604. You can see that price has kind of reacted strongly over there. Like SPX, we got a pretty strong bounce off of there on Tuesday, the 3rd of March. Same thing with SPY, like 670, 671. And on Qs, you actually see the 604 level stop a pretty strong drop on the 26th of February, Thursday. So what are those? Those are just pivot points. And it's like pivot points are talked about a lot, I would say generally in the Asgard server. It's just a really simple way that you can mark out important price action levels. So if you marked those pivot points on your chart on and you had them marked already just from seeing those strong price reactions on the opening on Friday, you would have seen that we were overshooting or touching these pivot points, like overshooting them on SPY and QQ and SPX, and about to touch on QQQ. And combining that with seeing around like how around like 50 950, that there's just these two nodes that flash at 6650 and 6645 on SPX. Like they come into existence within like a minute or two. You could say that we were overshooting pivot points, and then you see those flash, and you're like, okay, that's one more level of confluence I can add. Um, so sometimes price action, like having those levels, is really going to help you because ideally you're combining price action with heat seeker. You're combining the levels that price has already reacted to, and then you're seeing the gamma exposure. And if you have that confluence with heat seeker where you have structure to short off of, like a Pika or a Barney node that price is hitting, then excellent. Uh, but all this to say, it's all like a Glitch can trade off of just the heat maps sometimes because he's got like 9 years of experience. But if you're just, if you don't know much about price action or you're just starting to trade and stuff like that, you should really be marking out these levels on your chart. Like you need to be charting as well as using Heat Seeker. And that's pretty much what I had. Yeah, thank you. I think Admiral had a question. I was hoping someone could talk about how they pick strikes specifically, not hand wavy, but like, do you look at Greeks vibe plus minus 5 points? What? Uh, could you? I'm not sure if I understand exactly what your question is in terms of picking strikes. Like, are you talking about the level overshoots or like when you take action? Contract selection. to add to that, like, yeah, like options. So there's no like one single way to think about picking a strike. It literally just depends on your strategy. So, what I will say is that if you're buying an option close to the money, like where spot price is, if you're buying like a 695 call, expecting it to go up, and SPY is right at 695, that option contract is going to be much more reactive in price, and you're going to get more quick and larger increases in the price of the option contract because it's closest to the money versus if you buy like a SPY 700 contract when the price is at 695, because the 700 contract will have a slight increase in price as the price starts going up, but option contracts are most reactive and inflate and deflate in value closest to the strike. So, what is going to happen with your out of the money options contracts if the trade is going in your direction is that they're going to start inflating in value bit by bit. But it's not until you get to within a few strikes of the option contract strike that you've chosen that you will start to see those larger fluctuations in value. So, it can be safer to play like at the money or in the money, quote unquote, safer, to get that, you know, immediate increase or in the options contract. But uh, out of the money is cheaper. So if you think that price is going to hit that out of the money, you are taking that risk that maybe price never quite gets there, and you have very low contract repricing, and the move just never really gets there, and the theta burns on you. So you end up just like taking it for a scratch or for a loss. So that's like one way to just balance the views of at the money options versus like out of the money options.
John, do you want to answer? Are you here, John?
Yeah, but I'll be right back. My wife needs me for a quick second.
So Nico, sequence's question is it better to chart? Is it better to chart on futures maps like NQ or by QQQ, SPX when it comes to look for liquidity sweeps? I don't really chart on futures maps, but I don't know if you
If
do.
you
If you want to answer
give
that.
me like 2 seconds, I can come back and answer it. Or you
Okay.
can kind of just answer it, Nico. I just need 2 seconds. Okay.
There you are.
Mhm. You are.
cover the okay, yeah, you covered it, Nico. Cool.
It was sequence, yeah.
Yep. That's right. There is an NQH, isn't there? I don't know. Oh, I just use NQ. I just use NQ1. I don't even know there was an NQH. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. I just didn't know, like, I don't really use the NQH chart. I just trade off of it. Yeah, for sure. Oh, speaking of which, uh, yo, real quick, something important to note. Futures traders out there, if you're not familiar, it's actually this Friday's quad witching. So NQ futures contracts are going to roll over. So yeah, yeah, quad witching is
Yep.
actually I think FOMC is Wednesday
Quad
actually. Damn,
witching,
that's good.
Vixbury as well. It's going to be a
And
very interesting
and
week.
and FOMC actually, right?
Yep.
FOMC is damn.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be a let's go. It's gonna be a volatile week.
Ye-
Let's fucking
Yeah.
go.
If you're a beginner, would recommend, like, if you're new to Asgard and you're new to trading, I would just recommend sizing light or watching what's happening because there's
Real,
going to be
uh-huh.
abnormal price action as contracts start rolling over, as like institutions start repositioning for the next month and for the next contracts.
Real quick, is everyone so I know there's a lot of people who have been trading on NQ and ES futures, or like TA. Is everyone kind of familiar with quad witching and what it is, or do you guys need me to kind of go over it real quick? I don't believe I covered that in week one futures clinic. Okay. Quad witching is basically like quarterly OPEX. So NQ and ES, or just futures in general, they contracts roll over and they expire once a quarter. So that's March OPEX, I believe June OPEX, September OPEX, and December OPEX. Those are going to be when futures contracts expire and roll over. That's going to be when OPEX contracts expire, right? So we see a lot of volatility and we see a lot of dealer repositioning as they prepare for the next quarter. So it gets really, really volatile, and that usually happens around FOMC as well, which also happens that same week of quad witching. So basically, that's to say, when we get quad witching, which in this case is going to be March 20th, we're going to see NQ futures contracts roll over from NQ, what is it, H to NQM. H and the M and then the Z and then whatever the U, I believe it is, basically tells us what expiration, right? So we have March expiration about to expire. We're going to see rotation into June expiration, right? So this week and yeah, especially this week, you might see shuffling of values on your NQ1 contracts as the rollover begins to happen. So just be careful and be cautious if you're going to be charting on NQ futures, as we may see more divergences this week, more than normal. Yeah, thanks, Mike. H to M. Yep. By the way, everyone in the Discord stage, please go to glitch analysis. Glitch just posted an
It already
announcement
hit. It already
saying
hit.
that
It already hit. It already hit. It's at
100.
100 now.
No, no, no. Oh, 100, yeah, yeah, right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yep.
All right, time for him to join like an hour late.
I know, right? Where's my Where's my king? There he is, 100.
Wait, did you answer what about how it affects delta hedging and may limit moves on individual stocks? Did you answer that one yet or no?
Me?
Or did you?
Where's my degenerate king? He's aura farming. Is it, does anyone have any questions that they did not get answered that they want to repeat? Just kind of bring them back to the
There's no
bottom
what?
again.
There's not. I don't think so. No.
Everyone's waiting for
Yeah,
Glitch to hop on. This is funny.
I hit him, glitch. So it's coming.
I think did you already answer Can's question, or did somebody already answer his question about like how?
Oh, the overshoot.
Yeah, overshoots, and
I mean,
hmm, I think we talked about it a few times, but overshoots also in the context of Trinity, like that's the strength of Trinity. Uh, if you see something like overshoot on one, but it's getting close to, a significant node on another, then you that is confluence in a certain sense. So being able to read all three of the maps instead of just like reading one map and thinking about whether it's overshooting or not, check the other maps to see if there's a node of significance that price can react to, because that may be the thing that sets off the price to reverse.
He's here. How do we move him up to speaker? Is that us, or does he have to request it?
I mean, I can.
But she's here.
Cadence had a question about why their ES chart is 10 to
Yeah,
15
I'm on
minutes
it, Glitchy.
behind, and that's because you have to pay for data.
There he is.
Make sure you mute. You boomer.
Up, my king.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen too, but we'll probably do it in after you guys are done.
Do it now, because I don't know how long I'm gonna go for, so I want to see what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
Then we can answer
I'm pretty
questions.
much done. Glitch, do you
Plus, you
want
got
this?
everyone. It's 10 p.m. Everyone's got work tomorrow. You know, they came in here.
Glitch, do you want this part recorded or not?
Yeah, you might have to turn off the recording though.
Yeah, go ahead and, yeah, just cut the recording right now, and then I can go ahead and share. How come it won't let me share my screen? Is it because somebody is already sharing theirs?